everybody, my name is Luke Marr and this is Hot Mode, and today on Hot Mode we are coming to you with a 2023 Cannes Film Festival fashion roast and review. This is going to be a part one because there's a lot of Cannes to talk about, and yes, I'm saying it with the French, the at the end, just because everybody's going to be like, you're not saying it right. I am getting ahead of the situation. This is going to be some of the heavy hitters that we love and that we wanted to discuss from Cannes so far. There's going to be other videos coming again, as I've just said. Keep your eye out. But before we get any further into the video, I want to say a huge shout out to today's sponsor, who is Bright Cellars. Bright Cellars is the monthly wine club that uses real scientific data to match you with wines that are suited to your taste palette. Bright Cellars takes the hassle and stress out of getting the best and coolest wines while having them delivered right to your doorstep. Now, as much as I would love to say that I am a novice sommelier, I cannot, because that would be a bold-faced lie. But with Bright Cellars, I don't have to be. Thank goodness, because they do all of the heavy lifting and barefoot grape stomping for me. And thanks to Bright Cellars, you can get $100 off their subscription by clicking the link in the description box below. Now, you're probably wondering how Bright Cellars will bring you the perfect wine for your tastes and your desires. That's with the help of their quick 7-question quiz. It's super fun and easy to take and will lead you to an array of new wines that will have your taste buds singing. Just like that. Now, Bright Cellars doesn't just source their brands, but they also design them, which explains interesting wines like Batik, a Chenin Blanc with notes of lime zest, kiwi, and ginger. Now, not only is Batik a textile dyeing technique, which is perfect for a fashion lover, but its light and crispy flavors hit the spot. The great thing about Bright Cellars is they work closely with winemakers from over 80 wine regions to craft over 100 different varietals of compelling wines and dynamic blends that are designed to be enjoyed. Bright Cellars offers wines beyond your typical grocery store wine, including sustainable varietals, biodynamic wines, and even premium sparkling wines. Now, Bright Cellars doesn't just provide a tasty variety of wines, but an education on them, and an opening of my mind on what wines can be. And it gives you food pairings that will work too, like trying the apostate Cabernet Franc with a rack of lamb or a quinoa bean bowl. And the best part is, if you don't like one of the wines selected for you from your quiz results, you can change it out, which is great for the picky patsies like myself. And if you end up not liking a bottle, Bright Cellars will replace it. So thanks to Bright Cellars for giving you all a limited time offer of $100 off their subscription and a free wine tote. So click the link in the description box below to take the quiz and get started with Bright Cellars today. And with that, let's get on with the rest of the video. First up, we have Bilal Hassani, who is a French singer and songwriter. She went for it and a half, and I am kind of like shook by it. It's low-key giving me goosebumps. But she is wearing a look from Alexander McQueen. It's a vintage piece, and it is from the Fall 2010 collection, which was the collection that followed Alexander McQueen's death. It's called Angels and Demons, and in reality, the collection looked at the Dark Ages for inspiration. And I've just never seen somebody actually wear any of the pieces from it. I've seen it in museums, I've seen it in catalogs, I've seen it in exhibition books, but I've never seen it on a literal human being. That isn't Carly Claus, specifically for this dress. Now, this is the second to last look from the actual collection. The collection was actually only done to an 80% degree, so there were supposed to be about 4 more looks, I believe. They're supposed to come in to the collection. First and foremost, a very fitted bodice that is incredibly heavily appliqued. There are these gorgeous sort of golden swirls, motifs, and movements that run throughout the majority of the bodice. And then there is also a crystallization detail that starts heavily up top, degrades down as we get into the sleeve section, and then sort of ramps itself back up as we get towards the hem of the sleeve. It's a drop waist style, it's form-fitting, it's really beautiful, it's really gorgeous. The fact that it is inspired by the Dark Ages, and I would presume the art of the Dark Ages as well. If you look at a lot of art from the Dark Ages, it is heavily inspired by Christian symbolism, whether it's Jesus, Mary, Joseph, God, and there's also a lot of depictions that are kind of violent. And the other thing that's very important about the Dark Age work is the fact that there is so much gold that runs throughout it. It's just so heavy in terms of gold, and so I think that's probably why McQueen was going for a lot of gold when it came to this look. As for the skirt, it is this beautiful draped skirt. I mean, it's insane. I think Sarah Burton was once quoted as saying something about how Alexander McQueen was just coming into the studio and just draping and draping and draping. And I think this skirt is an example of that work. I mean, it's insane. If we look at where the skirt really begins, it's tight, those little pieces of fabric that are gathered together and then slowly fans out into a beautiful silk skirt. It's really lovely. It's really gorgeous. On top of it, Bilal has gone for this really stunning sort of headpiece. It almost looks like gauze wrapped around the head with little feather faux hawk running down the front, which is in correlation to the actual runway styles as well. I'm just amazed by it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's awesome. I think it's super duper cool. I don't want everybody and their mother to run out and start doing Angel and Demons McQueen looks, but shout out to Bilal for really going for it. I'm in shock, speechless at seeing it in real life, even though I'm not seeing it in real life. Next up, we have Brie Larson, who went heavy-handed on the Chanel this can. She's wearing this look from Chanel's Spring 2023 Haute Couture collection. Is certainly something. It's a full jumpsuit, sleeveless, and it's made up entirely of what I believe is lace and then some sort of colored applique. I think it might be sequins, but I'm not sure. But this applique sort of makes up all these little flower motifs that run throughout. It's white, it's red, it's kind of pink. It's just a tough look. I think, you know, it's hard for somebody to put on a floral jumpsuit like this and not make one think of baby's first birthday. I do think the shoes is a way to try to step it up and make it feel a little bit more grown up. I don't know if it works, and I think also the peep toe is a little tough. I do like the headband, and thank God we didn't wear the bow tie element that came from the runway, so that's a plus. But overall, I just think it feels, again, a little bit Babies R Us for me. I just am not seeing the love of it. It's a print preference kind of thing, and I am not the target audience. Next up is Cate Blanchett. She is wearing Louis Vuitton. This is a custom look, and honestly, shocker, I kind of like this. Now, I will say I believe that this sort of drapey reference actually comes from fall 2009 Balenciaga by Nicolas Ghesquière. Now, the thing about this Cate dress is it's a form-fitting velvet gown for the most part. I mean, the structure up top, the way that it fits on the sleeves and the shoulders, it's lovely. The way that the black velvet sort of sits around the waist too, I think is great. I think it supports. It doesn't seem like it's cinched either, so it's probably more comfortable. Although again, like, how comfortable can a black velvet gown be? But I digress. The rest of the dress is pretty much made up of this black velvet sheath skirt. Really like it. It hits the floor and it pools a little bit, but I think it's decent. I guess with the draping element, you know, fluidity is flowing. But the thing, going back to the draping, is that this sort of light green, I would say, it's almost like a mint green, comes in at the sort of bust area and in reality creates sort of cups that cover the actual breast. And I think it's smart. And then it almost looks like, because of the way that it's draped, that it flows underneath the black band and then sort of re-emerges on the hip area and creates almost like a faux panier sort of effect. It exaggerates the hips, but it still has that sort of draped feeling and style. Now listen, does it look a little bit Bozo the Clown? Sure, absolutely, 100% agree, you know, I get it. But at the same time, it's a chic Bozo the Clown. She's hot, she's sexy, she knows what she's doing, she has a horn in her back pocket and she will beep it if she wants. I think it's fun, I think it's hot, I think it's cool, I think it's different, the fit is phenomenal. So listen, you don't have to like it, but you have to respect it. Next up we have Dua Lipa. She's wearing Celine. It's a custom style. It's an asymmetrical little moment. The 3 slashes that come throughout this asymmetrical dress in the bodice, waist, and hip area is meant to be sort of seductive and sexy. And considering that Dua Lipa also was showing off the fact that she's a boyfriend now, I get why she's probably doing it. There's also a high slit as well. My thing is, she looks gorgeous. Can't say that she doesn't. When I saw the pictures, I was like, oh. But I do think the dress in and of itself, while I understand it's Celine, so it's meant to be a little bit more simplistic, it's not really trying to be showy and avant-garde. There's something about the silk that also just feels a little bit puckery. Right below that bottom slit, you can see where the pucker is coming in, and also on the skirt on the left side, you know, across from the slit on her leg. There just seems to be a little bit of puckerage and duckerage, and that's my one issue. Like, if we're gonna do simple, it has to be flawless. And the thing is, I think it's close to flawless, but it's not flawless. I also think maybe Dua Lipa was trying to stay off being full Versace woman the whole time, so I guess that's also kind of smart. It gives a little bit of a breather before she debuted her show at Cannes. But all in all, she looks great, but I want more. Next up we have Elle Fanning. Elle Fanning does not come to play when it comes to Cannes. She goes for it. And she is wearing this custom Alexander McQueen gown. It is based on a look from fall 2023, based on anatomy, specifically the anatomy of tailoring. But there were a lot of beautiful dress styles, and something that we saw a lot throughout the collection was the orchid and the way that the orchid was recreated, which we can see on Elle's look. It is beautifully embellished with gorgeous silver and crystals. It's really stunning. It does look immaculate on her, but what's different from the actual runway is the fact that there is this large sort of pink tulle gown. The gathering, again, is really gorgeous. I think if we think about the Bilal look as well, there is that continuity of the gathering of the skirt. It's a little bit different, obviously, but that's something that Sarah Burton has kept from McQueen going. And now normally I'd say, well, the silver doesn't really match the pink of the skirt, but I do think that McQueen did a good job of actually embedding the crystals into the top of the skirt. And so as the skirt flows down, we can see that the silver comes in and then slowly sort of fades away to give a little bit of an ombre and dégradé effect. I think a big part of the look is Elle herself. She really does sell a garment. If you look at the different photos, she looks immaculate. She looks stunning. She really understands how to deliver. I also think just in general, the colors really work well with her. And I think you can't top the level of craftsmanship that went into that actual bodice. Approved, very much so. Next up we have Gemma Chan, and she is wearing Louis Vuitton. This is a custom style. It is a floor-length white gown with a high collar. It's sleeveless, and it's full of white sequins. Now, the bodice is actually very simple. It's very plain. We can see the darts. It's really easy. Fits her phenomenally, I would say. And then as we reach the sort of waist area, that's when these big, beautiful sequins start to come into effect. As we hit around the shin area, it goes back to this very, very sort of matte fabric. It's really, really simple. The sequins really are meant to sort of strike your eye in a certain angle, and I think it does. But the thing that really is important, I think, in the actual look is the fact that there is a sort of back cape, drape, train trail that flows back into the skirt and doesn't actually create a train at all, but rather it sort of highlights the fact that the back is elegant, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's stunning. And the thing that I love about it is, in a weird way, it reminds me of robe à la française, which is the 18th century French court dress. It is not made up of two wide box pleats, which are the things that really make a robe à la française a robe à la française. But I think there's something about the actual element of highlighting the back in this way with sort of flowing fabric running down and then returning back into the skirt, and there not being any sort of extra element and detail in the train, really highlights that back area so, so beautifully. And I think Gemma Chan also knows how to give face, so it's like a perfect way to frame her. And there's something about the simplicity that works so, so well, and reminds me a lot of Astrid from Crazy Rich Asians, but like that's a whole different video that I really could do, and I just have to write it. I hate the Astrid costume designs. Long story short, I love this dress. I think the beauty is there. I think the simplicity is there. And I think that the craftsmanship and quality is there. It's a serve. Next up we have Gigi Hadid, and she is wearing a custom Zac Posen look. And listen, I love a Zac Posen look. You know what I mean? Like, I got closets full of ZP dresses. Each one of them is really stunning, gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful in their own way. And there's something about the fact that Zac uses seams, which are such an integral part of creating clothing, to actually highlight the body instead of the frills and frays and frenums of sequins and paillettes and embroidery. Zac lets the fabric itself do the talking. Listen, it's a muted beige strapless gown, and we can see up top that the seams actually do create a little bit of a spotlight on the bust area, although it's not just, oh, here are boobs. Rather, it's sort of fitted to the side and just sort of highlights them, but doesn't make them the focal point. When we hit the waist area, though, we can see there are two excess panels of fabric that actually sort of jut out, exaggerate the hip to a degree, and then slowly contour into the front of the gown and help to create a mermaid shape, so really goes hourglass figure. And that's because these extra pieces of fabric really do create that contoured and exaggerated effect. Now, this beige color would not really be my choice. I think that something more striking, a little bit more exaggerated, something a little bit more rich would be really, really nice for Gigi. And from the knee down, I understand it looks not sloppy, but it looks a little bit overwhelming to the average person. If you spend a lot of time with Zac Posen gowns, then you know it's not really that overwhelming. But I can understand that for somebody that hasn't, it might seem a little bit clunky down there. A, I'm happy to see that Gigi is continuing to wear Zac Posen. B, I'm happy to see that Zac Posen is, again, still continuing to be on the red carpet. So, like, as a ZP stan, I'm happy with that. Next up, we have Irina Shayk, and she is wearing Mowalola. This is from Mowalola Ogunlesi's Fall 2023 collection, and it's certainly one of the looks that was discussed quite heavily because Cannes is very restrictive about what you are to wear. You have to wear heels. I'm pretty positive for the most part. Certain people get kicked out if they don't, and you're not really supposed to be like vulgar, you know, wide word. And so I think that's why people were kind of discussing this Irina look. Now the look I believe is made up of leather. Essentially it's a crisscross sort of bra style up top. It's black, but if we zoom in, we can see that there's actually sort of little shades of red that are flowing out from underneath. It almost looks like somebody painted red leather. And then over time, it's really started to rub away the black over top and the red is sort of coming out. And then as we move down, we can see that the body is very much so exposed, except to where we get to the hip area. There is a low slung mermaid skirt, and the red leather with black painted over top that is slowly fading away also seems to come out. Although if we look here, it's very heavily based where the seamage is that sort of, again, gets to sort of see this red emerge. I think it's a smart way to highlight the seams that are going on the actual look. I think it's cool. I think it works. I think it adds a fun sort of vibe and feel and grunginess to it. But at the same time, I think the mermaid skirt itself is really gorgeous. I think it fits her really, really beautifully and does have an elegant feel to it. But when you go up top, it's really sort of young and fun and wanting to go out and bucking tradition and things like that. So in this weird way, it's a very sort of dichotomous look of what is and what is not appropriate. I think she looks good in it. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think the top could have fit maybe a little bit better. But besides that, I'm into the vibe. I don't think it's inappropriate. Next up, we have Jennie Kim, and she is wearing Chanel. She looks good. Now, this is a Chanel look that is from the Spring 2020 Haute Couture collection. And I love it on her when you look at the way that it was styled on the actual model, who is Kaia Gerber. So the fact that it was styled on Kaia Gerber and it still looks like that is telling. I think it's a great example of how to unstyle Virginie Viard's work and how you will look really good. It's a beautiful belle dress in a gorgeous floral lace. It is based on the Abbey of Aubazine, which is where Coco Chanel is from. You know, this where she was raised by the nuns. So, in case you needed to know, that's why Kaia Gerber also literally looks like a small nun girl. I love the fact that instead of the black chiffon sitting over the shoulders, rather it falls off in a sort of seductive, rather beautiful way. Nice way to sort of separate or at least take your eye off of the majority of the white sort of look. But the dress itself fits this woman phenomenally. It is beautiful. It's a gorgeous sort of bell shape. Like the way that it cuts in at the waist is lovely and then flares out. There's the tulle that sits underneath the lace to really sort of give it that exaggerated bell effect in terms of silhouette. And then the peep toe shoe, a little bow on it. Not my favorite, but like again, it's not a white stocking, white sock, and black flat. So I think anything here is really a win. I just think Jennie looks great. I think she looks fantastic. I think she looks beautiful. I think it's a great example of how to do simplicity really, really well. She's done it. She's done it. Next up, we have Jennifer Lawrence. She is wearing a Dior look. I believe this is custom. If we start up top, it's strapped and exposes the shoulders, a little bit of collarbone area, and the arms. It has a little bit of a flounce neckline element, but it's only partial piece. And then as we can see, the dress is really simple. It cuts in at the waist and then flows out really subtly, hits the floor, but not dramatically. It doesn't pool. I think it's really, really well done in that concept. And then there's a little bit of this off-the-shoulder shawl thing, which to me feels very Valentino, to be honest, but I'm also not going to be like, Maria Grazia copied per Paolo Piccioli of Valentino, because she used to be the other creative director at Valentino. So, you know, I'm not going to go that deep into the Valentino archive to really be like, oh my God, because I don't think it is. I think that it's more sort of just simplicity. In the grand scheme of things, is it my favorite Dior look at all? No. I do think it's a nice look. I do think it fits her really, really beautifully. I think that that's important if you're going to do simple. Again, it has to be almost perfect. And I think that this is a good example of that. I've slowly grown to like Maria Grazia's Dior more. I think this is a good example of something to add to that lexicon. So I'm doing that. Next up, we have Lily Rose-Depp, who wore a Chanel look from fall 1994. So it's vintage style. It's a strapless cocktail dress that is fully sequined in black. And at the actual neckline, it has a little lace flounce overlay. There is a blue flower with green sort of foliage that sits right underneath, and I believe what is like yellow little center. I don't know what you call those on flowers. I apologize, sue me. There's a small placket that runs down in silk and ends in a little bow as well that sort of finishes right off at the waist too, and there are some buttons in there. And then Lily has gone and sort of done a full, what is stocking and sheer glove combo, which I think plays into the actual look from the runway. I think it's a nice dress. I think it's cute. I think it's fun. I think it works. I'm just also not really wowed by it. It doesn't scream Idol to me. It screams more American Idol to me. Actually, I'm kidding. I really don't think it's that bad. I'm not really wowed by it. I'm not like, oh my God, oh. It's there and it's nice. She looks good, but that's it. Another wow archive fashion moment came in the form of Natalie Portman in this Dior look, which is essentially a take on the Junon dress from fall 1949 haute couture by Christian Dior himself. This is a recreation of that dress. It is not the actual dress, but we have been seeing a lot of recreations of Junon. Now, the dress is a strapless style. The bodice is white and it is full of really simple sort of clusters of sequins. But as we hit the skirt area, this recreation of the original gown follows it very, very, very closely. And we can see that these beautiful petals are actually all sort of descending down slowly. But what happens is each of the rims of these petals is embroidered with what looks to be blue sort of sequins. It's really stunning. It's a stunning piece. And I like the fact that Dior did not pull it out of the archive and said, put it on Natalie Portman. Rather, they recreated it really, really diligently. And I appreciate that from a fashion history perspective. Junon is based on Hera, who I think is related to Venus and also was like the son of Saturn. It's a really beautiful dress. It's amazing to see Natalie Portman wear it. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. She's been a Dior face for decades at this point. It's a fashion moment, I would say, the very least. I was a little bit shell-shocked. I think that we're seeing good archival styles here again. So we have Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and she is wearing a Schiaparelli dress. It's a really, really beautiful style, and it looks probably really simple to everybody, and so you're probably saying, Luke, why do you actually like this? But I think it has a cool provenance, which I will get into. But to look at the dress, it's pretty much a black sort of negligee slip dress that when it hits the knee area sort of pools and sort of drapes itself. Essentially, it's a black negligee sort of slip dress that when it hits the knee area pools, as we can see, and it some people might seem awkward, but in reality, the reason that it pools obviously is because this train is here that sort of juts out from underneath it and creates a mermaid shape. The thing is, when you look at the dress, it is very simple. I understand that. But what I think Daniel Roseberry is actually referencing is a very iconic Charles James dress, which is the tree dress, which is from 1955. And in reality, Charles James, the British-American fashion architect that everybody loves, is an inspiration to designers like Dior and Balenciaga, Zach Posen, obviously Daniel Roseberry, was a very close collaborator of Elsa Schiaparelli, I believe, during the 1930s. They stayed friends, and in reality, they were oftentimes inspired by each other's work. When we look at the dress, we can see that there probably is that Charles James-y-ness reference, because when you look at the tree dress, it definitely does drape, and this mermaid sort of skirt emerges out from underneath it. And it creates this really intriguing dichotomy of curved, but also very strict, straight, linear lines. I think it's also smart that it's done in this sort of lingerie style instead of like a very heavy sort of taffeta, and there isn't as much sort of draping going on. Rather, it's very slip dressy, which I think would appeal to a much more modern customer. I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. I think it has a nice provenance for Schiaparelli, but at the same time, it's dynamic, it's intriguing, it's memorable, not too memorable, but memorable enough. Next up, we have Rosé wearing Saint Laurent. Now, this is a custom creation, I believe. Now, it's a halter style that really starts up top. It wraps around the neck in black silk, and then we have it sort of asymmetrically draping up slightly to the left side of her body. And we have these sort of fabric folds that flow over each other. We can see that there is one sort of sheer little panel that has been not covered. And then the dress slowly falls with these fabric sort of flaps down, hits around the waist area in a diagonal fashion, and then is pretty simple, straight down, fall, easy peasy. I just don't really get the dress, you know what I mean? Like, I like the Saint Laurent element, I like the black, I think it's cool, I think it's chic, that's great, but the dress in and of itself I don't really think says much. I don't think it really makes one excited or intrigued or feeling any kind of emotion whatsoever. And again, I get it. It's Saint Laurent. It's meant to be simple. It's meant to be easy. It's meant to be classic. But at the same time, I say there's a lot of really cool Saint Laurent stuff to go into the archive for and to pull out. And I feel like something could have been done here in that case to really make it pop. She looks gorgeous, of course, but I just don't think the dress really does much. I don't really understand what's going on the bodice. The fabric folds just feel weird and awkward and off. It's unfortunate because she's a gorgeous girl. It's just the dress isn't working. Next up, we have Sydney Sweeney, and she is wearing a custom Miu Miu dress, and it's a pretty controversial one. It did not go over well on the internet, and it's mostly because the dress is made up of a pretty simple sort of sheath style. It's in a silk, it's flowy, it's white, but the issue really comes in the fact that while it's a spaghetti strap dress, it seems to be that the neckline has been sort of lowered and shortened to the point where you would be able to see a bit of nip if there was not this baby blue silk bra that sat underneath it. And the thing is, I think that the idea is fun, you know what I mean? I think it's cool that you're doing something that like might show the nip, but in reality there's a bra underneath, and I think Miu Miu recently is also very heavy on sort of under styles, showing a lot of skin, really short micro skirts, really short bra tops, I mean like skirts that essentially show almost everything, you know, bra tops that are very, very short as well. It fits into what has been going on with Miu Miu recently, but I think the issue with the dress for me is really the way that it focuses up top. And it's not that the focus is bad. I like the idea. I like the concept. I think it's fun. I think it's risky. I think it's cool. But the way that the fabric sort of strip that sits up top and is connected to the skirt and the bra is different, and also very visibly different from what's going on the actual skirt. And the way that it outlines the bra underneath as well just feels awkward. There's just something about that bra wiring underneath that doesn't feel cool and interesting and intriguing, and also the fact that the fabric just looks very different. You can see where that discontinuation comes in. It just feels awkward. The idea, the concept is really cool, and I'm very into it, and A+ to Miu Miu for that. I just think execution-wise, we're sitting at like a C. So I hope to see it like honed in going forward. Like we might see it on the runway coming up, and that would be cool. I think that would be fun. It's just right now, I want a little bit of a stronger construction element of it. Next up, we have Viola Davis, who is wearing a custom Valentino haute couture look. It is a look that is based on fall 2022, and we can see that the big, beautiful feather coat cape is from that collection, but the dress that Viola actually wears is different from the one that is on the runway. That one's crystal. This one seems to be just a sort of simple white style, nothing really crazy there. It follows the idea of the asymmetrical neckline, which I actually think really, really works here. And I think the other thing that's really, really great about the look is that Viola is selling it. She is playing with the actual cape feather coat, which is what you want, is what you need, is how you have to sell the garment. I think she looks happy, she looks radiant, she looks excited. We've also been seeing her when she wears Valentino in feathers, so I also think it's cool to see that continuity, and just that jacket in and of itself is crazy. Like, it's a crazy jacket. It's big, it's beautiful. I think that light gray really, really works here. Again, it looks like a Muppet special, like Sesame Street was massacred, but like, honestly, for that moment, like, I'll take it. It's a beautiful coat. It's really exciting. I think she understands how to use it. I think that's very important, so I stand. And finally, we have Yeoh, who is another French singer and songwriter, and she is wearing Alexander McQueen. This is a custom look, but it's based on the fall 2019 collection, and I love this version more than I do the one on the runway. The look is based on roses. I mean, Alexander McQueen loved roses, and it's something that Sarah Burton has continued on with since she took over the brand. Now, we can see up top there is this sort of ridiculous taffeta sort of collar that enshrouds Yeoh's head. I love it. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think it frames the face really, really well. And the fact that we have the continuation of it on these sort of little caps and also at the neckline too, I think is smart. I think it keeps it all in the family. I'm into it. As for the actual bodice and dress, we can see that there are these pleated sort of panels that have been sewn down. But as we reach below the waist area, we can see that those pleats sort of come to life and become a dress in and of themselves. They lift off of the actual body. It's really cool. I'm into it. But the thing that's really, really great about the dress is obviously the skirt. Now, on the runway, there were a bunch of little roses, but they were smaller. They weren't little, I guess, but they were smaller versions. But here, Yeoh's look actually has two different big roses that sort of sit on each of the legs. It's really cool. It's really fun. I think it brings a symmetrical vibe to the actual look, and the look in and of itself, very symmetrical to begin with. I love it. I also love the dedication to the shoes. Listen, the shoes, the way that they zip and they sort of open, it's up to interpretation whether or not you like that, but I like the fact that we at least kept with an Alexander McQueen kind of shoe. It's leather, it's full of silver, it's full of grommets, it has a little bit of an edgier feeling to it, and that's not what we would normally expect from a Cannes sort of experience. I'm into those. I like the look. I think it's fun. I think it's a better custom version of what came down the runway. And as an Alexander McQueen muse who walked the fall 2023 show, I mean, like you saw, I'm a fan. So I'm into this vibe for her. So that is the end of our Ken part 1 for 2023 fashion roast and review. For best, I'm gonna go with Bilal Hassani, Jennie Kim, oh, Gemma Chan. I'm into that. Elle Fanning, oh, Natalie Portman, and Viola Davis. Worst, Rosé, Sydney Sweeney, Brie Larson. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys for part 2 of our Ken review. It's coming soon, don't worry. And so with that, I bid you adieu and TTYL.